there's still people in denial that this is a big deal. And there's also people in denial that, oh, just because there's been some setbacks with AI or not seeing the returns maybe, that it's not gonna work. I think if you don't take your bat off your shoulder and swing at those two pitches, you're gonna go back to what I said. You're gonna be roadkill.
This is AI First with Adam and Andy, the show that takes you straight to the front lines of AI innovation and business. I'm Andy Sack, alongside my co-host, Adam Brotman. Each episode, we bring you candid conversation with business leaders at the forefront of transforming their business with AI. No fluff, straight talk, actionable use cases, and insights for you. I'm so excited for today's episode. We have Fred Crosetto from AMMEX. Fred, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Andy.
Happy New Year. Glad you could come. Adam and I have known Fred for over 20 years. And when we were talking over the holidays about AI, Fred was like, oh, I've done some AI work. And so we really wanted to use today's episode to hear Fred's story about how he's implemented AI at AMMEX. Fred, let's start with introductions. If you could just tell a little bit to the audience about who you are and what AMMEX is.
Well, I'm the founder of AMMEX. We're one of the largest disposable distributors of gloves globally. Been doing it for almost 4 decades. I would consider that we're kind of in a blocking and tackling business, not the kind of company that would kind of like lean in and try to embrace AI. Actually, it was just the opposite. And then we have a number of other businesses. We have a large e-commerce business that does a significant amount on Amazon. We control almost 25% of the global glove sales on Amazon. We also have a significant business in China, which is a replication of what we do in North America and the Americas. And then we also have a large BPO business that helps American companies build offshore teams in the Philippines. And we're leaning in big time in AI there too.
And just so I'm clear, Fred, and the audience is clear, is the BPO business part of AMMEX or a separate business altogether?
It initially started as part of AMMEX, and then about 8-9 years ago was spun out. In that business today, we're going to be approaching nearly 2,000 team members and with over almost 125 clients in a number of different verticals. All those clients tend to be ones that are entrepreneurial, mid-market companies, 50 million to $1 billion, that are looking to just go scale their businesses, save money, and go faster.
And Fred, what's the history? How long have you been doing AMMEX? When did you start the company?
Started back in 1988 when I was 24 years old, and I even got a picture to prove it.
Yeah, by the way, Andy, it's probably worth mentioning our company is called Forum 3 because we were in the young entrepreneurs when we were all young entrepreneurs organization, the third forum of the Seattle chapter, and we were
all 3 of us were in it.
Yeah, and that's so you've been spiritually along the ride with our company, Fred. I wish we were spiritually along the ride with your company, given how well you've done. But it's great to talk to you. And Andy, just to jump in real quickly, are you mentioned that AMMEX is a blocking and tackling business. Like, before we get into how you applied AI, just along the same lines of what Andy's asking you, can you talk a little bit about when did you first think about ChatGPT or generative AI or like this new kind of AI? Like, what was your first kind of holy shit moment for you? And were you skeptical of whether it would apply to your business because you're a blocking and tackling business? And how did you overcome that skepticism?
It's a great question. And, I do want to just full disclosure, unlike you guys, I am not a technologist. I struggle with it. You wouldn't want me to even download Google Sheets for you. So for us, is one of the things I would say in a traditional business model where we, work globally, but we sell to dealers across the world. Automation has been a big thing for us for the last 6 or 7 years. So I use kind of automation as a precursor for AI. where we were looking at, what can we do to automate, semi-automate, or just flat out eliminate processes as you go along. And how do you do that across the business, across supply chain, across customer service, across logistics? We're kind of like the Nike of gloves. We work with a network of factories around the world. We have our own brands, we have our own marketing, and then we have to bring this all in and distribute it out all over the world. I think for AI, really, it popped up for me a little over 2 years ago. I mean, you heard it and things like that, and kind of not the holy shit, but the aha moment was I was in a conference in Milan for a group I'm in called YPO, and I ended up sitting. I got there late, and I sat in the back. Unbeknownst to me, all the speakers were sitting in the back, and I met this really cool guy that had this, advertising agency, and they were doing stuff projects globally. And they were talking about, I said, well, you should be happy with all this. This has got to be really driving your business, doing really well. And he goes, well, just the opposite. A project that I used to be able to bill out at $500,000, now, I might get 100,000 for. And I said, well, why is that? And he pulled out his laptop and he showed me this concept of this pizza company that, like kind of like a mod pizza, if you will. And he showed me the whole thing, 3D renderings, all this. He goes, everybody in these photos, everybody inside here, they don't exist. They're all AI generated. Every image. He goes, that means I don't have to have photo shoots. I don't have to have actors. I don't have to have not disclosure forms, everything like that. And I was just looking at like going, holy smokes. And then my left is this guy who was there to talk about AI. He got up there and now this is kind of old hat, but this was kind of an AI magic trick 2 years ago, was, okay, we wanted everybody to talk about a picture that's in their mind about what they think about this conference. And you can all add in words. And from the 300 people in the conference, the words went in and it created this image of what the collective thought was of everybody in the room. And I'm going like, wow, holy smokes. And so I went back, began to just kind of look at it and talk with our team. And I came to this realization, like, look, you're really at another one of these massive inflection points in technology. In my mind, it felt like kind of the biggest thing kind of since the internet. And my takeaway was, look, we can either act on this, we can react, or we can be roadkill. And you just decide what lane you want to be in. And you want to lean in this. Now, so I just said, let's just start acting on this right away. What are we going to do about it? And we went and started talking. And so the first thing we did was, that kind of came out of that, Adam, was we brought everybody together because there was so much. I don't need to tell you guys this. You guys are marinated and immersed in this. There's this spectrum of everything about AI, from magical fairy dust over on the far left that you just sprinkle on your business and it makes you faster, better, and stronger, to like, oh my gosh, if we do this, we're going to be, like Terminator. And I thought, well, okay, once again, how do we reel this back in? And once again, I guess I really looked at it as a realistic kind of like action focus. What can we do about this? We're not a technology company, but how can we become, for lack of a better term, the fastest running dinosaur in our industry? So what I shared with the team was, I went out and talked to 2 really smart guys I knew at Meta. And I said, would you come and talk to our leadership team for 90 minutes? And we brought in 40 of our top leaders from across the company. We had a 90-minute discussion. They kind of laid it out, gave this framework, did an excellent job, and really began to engage all the leaders across all the companies, because a lot of people had a lot of different opinions. Then the second stage, what we did is we went to another person that was a friend of mine who had written a book called The AI Factor, who was an adjunct professor at Columbia and also a YPO member. And we got the book for everybody. We took the group up to about 60 and then brought her in, Asha Saxena, and she spoke for an hour and went through it and just talked through kind of, how you go from A to B to C and all the factors. And from there, the takeaway was, and this was in about 18 months ago, we would just break into individual companies and individual groups and then start to break this down and say, how can we in each of our areas inside the business bring generative AI, if you will, to play, and where do we want to go with the low-hanging fruit?
And Fred, just so that's a great story. Just so I understand, where was your own personal usage of, like, it sounds like you went to this conference, you talked to these two people in Manila, and you come back and you're like, oh, this is a big, you had some kind of epiphany. Were you personally using it at that time?
No, I wasn't, because once again, I'm like the village idiot of technology. So I'm like just reading about it and doing everything and trying to figure it out. But this
So
is
Fred, as the village idiot, how did you go from, how did you have the instinct that this was a transformative moment, and that it was something that you wanted to act on as CEO?
well, then finally Chat GPT came out with the app. And so I got the app and I just started playing around with it. And I'm like going, holy smokes. And then I would go out and I would ask everybody that I knew, particularly people that were like sub 30, and said, hey, tell me how you're using, AI and Chat GPT in your daily life. And then they would come back with this anecdotal story about what they were doing and how they were doing this. I just prior to this call, I've got a young guy who worked at Blackstone for 3 years, a wicked smart kid that was valedictorian at Penn. And I posed the same question to him. I go, when was like your aha moment? And he goes, oh, well, we're sitting at Blackstone doing these deals, and I got a 200-page deck, and I don't want to read all three of the decks. And I just go to chat. I first start using Chat GPT, and he goes, take these three decks, tell me what the eight, what are the 5 cross-reference things on this, the 8 cross-references thing on that, and then you just break it down. And I go, what'd you think? And he goes, it was just like transformative.
Yeah. Yeah, what's amazing, to your point, and you've now you've got a theme that you've mentioned a couple times, which is like, how do you take this thing that's so almost like overwhelmingly interesting and hard to get your brain around, and then how do you make it practical for yourself? And you were asking people, how do they make it, what are their practical anecdotes? And then you did that with your company, and then you guys ultimately ended up doing some initiatives, right? Like and I don't know if we can talk about them, if you're comfortable talking about them, but like you did
No,
some
it's
stuff
it's
using
fine.
AI.
We kind of sat down and we took this basic framework. We looked at like optimizers, extenders, innovators, and where could you start? And we just started in the lower left-hand quadrant, which is just optimizers. So what are we doing, and how can we use AI to optimize our business? And then simultaneously, I threw a goal out there on the glove side of the business to say, you know what, we're going to double the size of the company in the next 4 years, and with the same amount of headcount. And the goal here was, because look, let's just face it, there's scary stuff of AI for employees. Like, hey, you're going to get rid of me. I looked at this the other way, was no. If I was just going to take the business sideways, yeah, there would be a concern there. But we're going to scale. We're going to get bigger. We're going to go, flywheel's going to spin faster. I want everybody on this team to have AI superpowers. And,
Yeah.
and what are those AI? So how can you use those tactically with those superpowers? But what we did, Adam, was first off, we began to break the teams down. And we said, okay, what could we use AI on each of the individual areas? Let's say like supply chain, customer service. What could you do internally, externally? But the big aha moment is that I think my guess is probably for most people working with this is data. Because you just think, oh, I'm just going to plug this AI thing in. Okay, but it's great if you're using Chat GPT and you want that, throw your shit out there and have in the common, market, and everybody suddenly has access. But what if you have security issues and you want to use your own internal data and you don't want to share that across those open platforms? For us and I think I mentioned this to Andy about a month ago, it was just the data. Is that, you've got to have data, and it's got to be clean data. And because if your data's not any good, you're not going to have any outcome. So without data, without any rules, we had done that. Now, so we kind of put together, I guess I would call a data readiness framework of what that data readiness would work. And then based upon that, Adam, we overlaid that in to say, okay, what departments can we go after first? Because we had issues, like for some security issues with like finance. There was things in finance that do we want that information out there? Do we want everybody to have the cost of goods? Do you want everybody to have your gross margins on a product? If that data falls out there into the wrong hands, that could be a bad outcome.
So Fred, where did you go back to your story? You you basically break into your different companies. You're focused on optimizing. What was your first step, and tell us what worked and what didn't?
So we decided, Andy, to look at it. Think about this. This is kind of like late 23, 24. Suddenly AI is just out there, and we went to some people to help us with some things. And, by the time we're talking to them, by the time we get their package back, let's say 4 weeks later, you're seeing like a 3x increase in what it's going to cost, or a 5x increase. So, and we also said, well, this project might take 6 months. And the way AI is going, that could be outdated before it's even delivered. So our CTO and the team, they were really, they said, look, we want to see strict ROI on whatever we do. We just don't want cool shit that we can all like make 3D, new avatars of how we all look on our LinkedIn pages. And which is great. You can go and you can download that on your own time. We looked at supply chain. We did some work in finance. We did some stuff in customer service. We did stuff in HR. And we were doing stuff both. We took projects, Andy, that were both internal and external. So
And you're doing all of these projects concurrently, or was there one first that you did? Like, what was your approach? After the two sort of the meta speakers came, and the person from the woman from New York, the author from New York. That step of like, what
right.
was
So I
first?
think one of the first ones they started with was marketing. And then marketing. So what we could do, how could we start to take leads, and how could we start to break things down and we were using Salesforce. So this is before Salesforce had rolled out their initial their AI capabilities. We said, well, we're going to go in there because what is AI like is data and rules. So we wanted to kind of create that and go through that. And then how do you sift and sort and say, what's the prospect? How do we do this? What's the TAM on the client, everything like that. So they dug into that. They went on that first. I'd say that one was like fairly successful. I mean, none of them were, I guess it looks like you kind of talk about like there's iterations. Like the first time we did it, it was like, it was okay. We made progress, but through that progress, then it's like, okay, then what's the next? You kind of got to keep going at it and going at it. Part of it you learn is like, once again, oh crap, we don't have the best data. So we have to clean that data up once again to get where we need to go. So I would say we did 2 or 3 of them that were like, okay. And the one that was kind of the break.
The 2 or 3, just to name them, were what?
Well, we did, like I said, we went on marketing, started first, kind of internal marketing for outbound, prospecting. We did supply chain. We did some stuff on finance. But the big one came when we went to internal kind of, if you will, customer service, HR, and internal issues for our own people. That's where we really had, we started to put everything, in together. Like, okay, if team members from around the world want information on their HR benefits, when are they going to get paid? What are my, all the different things. That was the biggest win. We went through that. We rolled that out. And within the first 2 weeks, we had about a 19% deflection rate in the number of questions that could be immediately answered by the bot and not by the team members. By the end of the quarter, it had jumped up to 68%. So 68% of the team members were being self-service and getting the questions answered correctly by the bot, doing, what they wanted to do. And now they're just taking that one step further. So that was internally. Then we also took that same approach and went outside externally with clients through, we use Salesforce to use that same kind of inbound deal. And we crushed it on that too. So those are 2 of the bigger wins.
Yeah, it's a couple of observations. Andy and I talk about like, oh, is this about like, is this gonna, how many jobs is this gonna take away? Is this about job elimination? Is this about productivity gains, et cetera? Fred, you said something that I want to highlight, which is, and hover over for a second, is because I said to Andy, I said, yeah, there's gonna be real issues with some people losing their jobs over AI, of course, over the next year or two. But I've never met a growing company that isn't under-resourced. I've never met one. I've never seen a growing company when you ask them, when you ask their teams anyways, what do we need to do to grow faster and better? They're always gonna say, I just need more people, or I need more help, or whatever. And so to your point, Fred, there's this trend, whether it be Moderna, which says they're doing the work of 100,000 people with their 5,000 people. It wasn't about laying people off. We did a case study with a company called Suzy, where he was able to mostly triple his sales without having to, like, reduce staff by very much, if at all. And then there's, of course, today there's this company called Klarna that famously, their CEO is saying, I'm just going to allow natural attrition to occur. I'm just not going to hire as many new people as I used to. And I just want to, like, become a bigger company, like, naturally and organically. And I think regardless of how that all plays out, because it's going to be bumpy, right? There's going to be some job loss. There's going to be some stuff where it's actually not about job loss. And I don't think it's one or the other. I think, but what I love is that you said, you kind of put a goal out there that said, hey, if I want to double, triple my sales in my company over the next 5 years without adding net staffing expenses, like, I want to see if it's possible using AI. I believe it could be. Let's have that be an aspirational goal. And it just sets the tone right, because it allows for this sort of give and take. It allows for experimentation. You're not trying to solve things in the next 3 months, but you've got kind of a North Star on horizon saying, like, why are you doing this? It's about improving speed, quality, productivity. It's not about, like, letting people go. Cause I like how you put it, like, if I was planning on taking the company sideways, and maybe, but, like, we got a lot to do. So I just wanted to highlight the way you said that. I thought that was worth, hovering over. And, I don't know, Andy, if you wanted to comment on that. Cause you and I talk a lot about that topic, and I appreciate the way Fred laid that out there.
I mean, Fred, like, you articulated, and Adam sort of hovering over it, this notion of, like, your instincts as CEO, have helped you grow your company from when you were 24 to what it is today, which is a massively successful worldwide import-export leading company of gloves. And your instinct, which was like, I'm going to put a goal out there, and you can rest assured I'm not trying to fire you, which is what's in a lot of employees' heads, is fear about the technology. It's the first time that a technology has really come for sort of knowledge work level staffing. And by putting the goal and saying, like, look, we're going to double the size of this and do it with the same headcount, inherent in that is, like, hey, you're safe. Let's be more productive. So that was just an instinctive leadership moment, which is obvious to you and instinctive, but not obvious to everyone. And then the second thing is you were like, yeah, like, it's all great. Like, we could do all this fancy stuff with LinkedIn, but you also had the instinct, like, hey, two things. One is you were like, let's try this in marketing, supply, and you kept trying it to get to the wins that you described, which was the internal HR support and the external customer support. And you got clear ROI there, and you were like, that's what we're going for. And I think those were two, like, just great CEO leadership moments.
Well, I think if you add to that too, Andy, I think what you also have to put in is, let's just talk about, and you guys know this way better than I, is just the evolution of AI. Just what we see, like, almost weekly now. So, I mean, compared to, like, when ChatGPT came out and somebody says, hey, I want to be doing this in 6 months, and the 6 months becomes 16 weeks, and 16 weeks becomes 6 days. And I mean, it's stunning to me it's coming out. So as we go through these iterations and keep leaning in, just imagine what's going to happen when you see exponential increases in the capabilities of AI. So on the accounting side, where the CFO is just going to be able to say, close the books. At some point, it's going to be pretty darn close to close the books. And it won't be this, like, everybody rush to the ramparts, close within 4 or 5 days. It'll be there. And, we're there. So here's the thing is, like, on the job loss deal, this isn't an AI thing. This isn't a new thing. This is a technology thing. I mean, think about, like, 30 years ago, we had pagers, but, I mean, did anybody care what happened to the pager guys? No. And so the same thing's going to happen is we have to look at the technology as a tool and say, okay, this is our lever. This is our wheel of 2025 that we're going to go faster on. Now, there's lots of things where we were doing. I think I want to break this down too, is we did two things. We did a strategic view and a tactical view. There's a lot of, you could have, I remember I went to one of our team leaders and I said, well, what are we doing? Well, we're doing 17 things with AI. And I go, what does that mean? And then I get this email of like 17 different AI programs that were being used or applications or whatever. Oh, okay. Like it sounds like Baskins and Robbins. You know what I mean? It's like we were all doing something and maybe we're all having fun. So that's great. But if we're going to really drive the company forward, set that North Star, there's got to be a strategic place that we're taking this to and how we're going to use this. Because some of these are just enterprise level. But there's lots of little stuff that you can use. Let me give you an example of just a big time saver for us and a huge cost savings. So we work with lots of distributors across the United States, across the world. And then, of course, we have, they'll send us an agreement. So let's just say somebody sends us an agreement and say, you got to sign our agreement. Here's our agreement. Before our CFO would have to take the agreement. We have to send it off to legal. They'd come back, blah, 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 blah. They'd redline. We go back and forth. What does the CFO do now? He just takes the agreement, drops it in. What are the 6 things I need to know that are the least advantageous clauses for us in this agreement? Boom, 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 boom. Within 18 seconds, he's got exactly there. He can look at all the stress and pain points in that agreement. And then we go back and we just say, well, what's our risk? Okay, fine. Change this. And suddenly that goes from maybe a 6-day process down to about a 16-minute process. So, it's there. I can give you examples where on our business in the Philippines that I support, one of the first things I said is we will never, ever, ever write a job description again. You tell us what the job is, what it is, like we put in 5 or 6 key points, ChatGPT will write that job description. At any particular time, we might have hundreds of openings, and we can't do that. And before, somebody would be struggling over what does a Magento developer look like in e-commerce or something like that. And people, what the hell is Magento? And then they're on the internet for 3 hours trying to figure that out. And how does that compare against this or that? Boom, just have them write it. So tactical, strategic, they're all savings. I think it goes back, Adam. The people that probably aren't using this are the ones, I guess the big mystifying thing to me is, which is just the most amazing, is there's been kind of this, like, I don't know, there's still people in denial that this is a big deal. And there's also people in denial that, just because there's been some setbacks with AI or not seeing the returns, maybe, that it's not going to work. Yeah. I think if you don't take your bat off your shoulder and swing at those 2 pitches, you're going to go back to what I said. You're either going to be, roadkill.
I was talking to a potential client for our firm yesterday in kind of a sales pitch. And I was explaining, to your point, like we, at our company, we talk about bucket 1, bucket 2. Like bucket 1 is kind of our own, random whiteboard like terminology. So we talk about, there are bucket 1 use cases, which is like every day. It's kind of a lot of stuff you mentioned, like you shouldn't be writing job descriptions again. You shouldn't, you should be running transcripts of meetings through this. You should be what I said to him was, he was the COO of the big company. And I said, you should not be making any major decision without riffing on it with O1 Pro. If you're a big executive, it's almost malpractice at this point to be making big decisions without running it by like a frontier model. And I said that to him. I said, by the way, regardless of whether you hire us or not, everybody should be doing their everyday important decisions, analysis, and thoughts, at least running it through these top models. Because that's insane to me that if you understand what they can do, it's insane to me that you wouldn't do that. It's just it's a inexpensive opportunity. Those are the everyday bucket 1 things. There's bucket 2 things that are like initiatives. Can we automate customer support and make a bot like you talked about doing? Can we use AI to do this other thing that enhances customer experience in some way that we'd have to otherwise hire a firm of developers to do? There's 2 different things. We're big fans of both, but it's amazing, to your point about how some people are in denial or whatever. You're just you literally have BCG level advisory capabilities at your fingertip for anything you want to do. You might think that's overkill, but once you get into the muscle memory of like, yeah, I should be bouncing this off of AI. I mean, Andy and I have gotten to the point where we barely have a conversation amongst ourselves or anybody else without recording it, because we just feel like, you mentioned data, like we feel like we're all sitting on a lot of, like, there's data, and then there's like things that you don't think of as data, which are like transcripts, and like the guy from that you mentioned, the whiz kid that used to use the PowerPoints for deals and like have it, like, that's data, right? It's just, we don't talk about it. You don't think of a PowerPoint as data. Like, we're surrounded by amazing data as leaders, and there's this incredible tool that's effectively free, that's available to us, and yet somehow there's this disconnect. You know, why do you think there's this disconnect? Like, to your point, like, why you get it, we get it, it's part of what we're doing, but we actually find that a lot of business leaders are still like, oh, I wonder what the ROI is going to be, and I wonder if it's a big deal still, what the use cases are going to be, and we're like, oh my God, the use cases are like every day, all day.
That's a great question. And it's a journey, it's an evolution as you go along. And I was having, about 2 months ago and 6 weeks ago, I was having lunch with a friend of mine from China who had gone to UW, MIT, worked over at HTC in Taiwan, and he just wrote a book. And this guy's like wicked smart. And we're talking, he goes, well, Fred, there's going to be, billion-dollar companies within the next 18 months with 1 or 2 people. And I said, like, what do you mean, 1 or 2 founders? He goes, no, like 1 or 2 people. And he kind of like, okay, I'm trying to put myself out there. I'm trying to think. I can't wrap my head around that. It's hard for me to brush my teeth in the morning by myself. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying is like, you got to, when you think out there, you go, so we go on for another 15 minutes. And then I look at him, I said, you know what? So I guess what I'm telling you, my goal about like doubling the company and not reducing headcount through technology isn't really ambitious. And he goes, yeah, pretty much. And so it was, it's one of those moments once again where you have to have this recalibration. And I think the challenge is, Adam, is if you're not in, just think of how many companies there are out there and people and this different businesses. Businesses is just so hard to run on a daily basis. I know the government thinks it's easy, and we should just we're not paying enough tax or whatever, but it's really hard. And then you're incorporating all these things. And then you're coming in and maybe you're not leaning in from this perspective of, let's just still face it in business. Entrepreneurs by nature, they're not afraid to take a shot and realize they're going to miss a couple. You know what I mean? The greatest hitters in baseball only get on 3 out of 10 times, but if you're a professional and you're thinking, well, gosh, I want to have a pretty unblemished record. Maybe I just won't, if I don't shoot, I won't have a miss, and then I'll have a perfect record. So I think there's some of that. I also think it's happening so quickly. It's there. I think that there's people inside most businesses that I was very blessed with our chief technology officer, who I said had been on this exploration of automation for a number of time. And this was just like all of a sudden accelerant to this journey. But a lot of people aren't in that, and that's, you got to fight that and think about traditional businesses with silos. And I'm talking with people. I was on the phone with a company yesterday and they were still telling me that they had their own data server room. I mean, what the heck? I mean, that's just like, you're just screaming to get hacked, and, not alone. You think if you have a data server room, how much AI you think you're going to be doing?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Fred, what's your advice for people? Like, what's your advice for CEOs about utilizing AI?
I think if you're a CEO, you got to look at it, kind of 2 ways. You got to start the journey. And the journey of 1,000 miles starts with 1 step. How do you eat the whale 1 bite at a time? And I think you have to, what does a CEO have to do? One of the CEO's number 1 things is to anticipate and act. And this AI requires you to anticipate and act. It's going to impact our business. So whatever that act is, start that journey, learn a little, just start to, spend 30 minutes a day, 45 minutes a day, listening to a podcast, reading something, getting up to speed. And then if I was a CEO, I would probably pull my people together and say, what do we collectively know about this? And, where do we see this as a SWOT analysis on our business? I still think there's lots of stuff. We have not had anything yet come out of our businesses which I would call an extender or an innovator that allows us then to take AI tools and then either give that as a free service to our clients, or to let them use something. So, and what is that going to do? That's just going to make it. Let's say we have 1,000 distributors, and we can come up with an AI tool that can help you sell more gloves, or it can help you on your other side of your business. How sticky is that going to be to you? I mean, who's going to come in and then knock you out on a 2% price decrease? Nobody. Yep.
What's been the hardest thing for you and your organization in terms of incorporating AI in your business?
I think it goes back to just inertia. That you just come to the swamp every day, and there's alligators in there, and you're trying to fight the alligators, and you forgot why you came to drain the swamp. And I just think that there's just the natural everyday deal of stuff going on. You got to deal with it. But I do think what the positive of that, Andy, is that when you see successes and people then see the success over there, let's say we talked about what we saw in kind of that HR side of our business, and then people go like, holy smokes, I want that to be my case study. I want a deflection point. And like one of the biggest areas I think we see for us, is internally, is for finance. But one of the things around finance, once again, security, mistakes. I'll give an example. We have a rule that, if any order comes in, it has over $10,000, it has to be approved by, somebody in the company. So there's all these unwritten rules. That throws off your AI models. And so we have to go through and say, are we really going to trust as we go forward in how you do it? I think just like anything else, think of it, it's kind of like when people started to go to the cloud. Remember? And it's like, hold on. You're going to let AWS handle this? But we've got this closet over here. Isn't that safer? Yeah, it is, until a truck knocks down the telephone pole next to your office and your whole servers go down for 5 days. So I think it's going to be a trusting, it's going to be an evolution. And it also goes back to what Adam hovered on that point is, there is going to be a lot of carnage for companies that do not act on this. There's going to be carnage for people that don't want to improve themselves and embrace these tools. And I would say kind of this continue to perform commodity functions. And if you're in a commodity function that has data and rules, it's going to probably be a bad outcome for you over the next 2 to 5 years, unless you really lean into this and evolve and put these tools to use for you.
Andy, Fred said something that's worth also highlighting that I thought was interesting just now, which is that when, Andy and I, as Fred,
Is drain the swamp comment?
That was I love that quote. I love the fact that we were there to drain the swamp, and then there's alligators, and we're just fighting alligators. We forgot what we're doing. It's a great description of what a lot of corporate work can feel like some days, because you just end up dealing with the shit that's in front of you and the problems. But going back to something you said about sharing and collaborating and exposing little mini case studies and use cases within the company. One cool thing about AI is, think about what you said, Fred. A lot of people, they come to this discussion and they think, well, I'm not a tech company, or I'm not an innovative company, or whatever they say. And they're like, how am I going to use AI? I wonder if we hear every day, Andy and I do, I wonder if it applies to me as a manufacturing company. Well, shit, Fred, you are the epitome of a basic, you called it, blocking and tackling manufacturing company. And you were giving examples of uplifts in quality and quantity and productivity and innovation, customer experiences across, you mentioned HR, finance, customer support, sales, marketing, right? You mentioned
Supply chain.
Yeah, you mentioned it's so cross-functional. So what's interesting is Andy and I spent our career from entrepreneurs to operators to investors and consultants. And as we've done that, we usually, it's not like what we did applied to every function. Like I'll be honest with you, as chief digital officer at Starbucks, like I wasn't interacting with the supply chain team most days, right? It's not that I never did, but pretty much never did, right? Like, and you could go, like, there's a lot of examples like that where there wasn't surface area for like collaboration and innovation at every level of the organization, horizontally and vertically. What's so cool about Gen AI, these like advanced systems that we have now that you're describing, there's this opportunity for leaders, individual contributors, everyone to like share what they learned and what they're doing and inspire other people across the organization. So it becomes like almost like a cultural thing that like you could sort of, Andy and I talk about it as like almost like this AI flywheel effect where it's like you're using it more and then you're thinking about use cases and you're sharing your internally what you're doing and you're inspiring other people. And like there's not a lot of other things that come along that'll let you do that in a company, and I find that to be a really interesting opportunity for leaders to think about AI in that way because it's not obvious, but when you start to go, oh my God, this is intelligence as a service.
But I
Like,
think then, Adam, I would turn that around. I think then that speaks to the culture of the organizations you're talking to. And for you guys out there now promoting your business, that would be almost like one of your top selling points of saying, of talking about the importance of using this as a tool for collaboration, for sharing, for recognition, for all of these things to shine. Because there's going to be, not every company has a culture of cooperation, of innovation. Let's face it, a lot of culture are cutthroat, they're not innovative. They're very Machiavellian. My data is my way to the top. And the complete opens the box to everybody. And that allows this person. I was talking with a bunch of young kids I was with over the holidays. They were lamenting about this. And I said, guys, this is like the greatest thing that's ever happened to you. I mean, this is the ultimate leveler of you. If you're average, you can be like above average now. If you're great, you can be like, exceptional. And so I think you're exactly right. How do you use that? But then that goes back to that iteration. That's like that feeds off it. And it's going to go back to that statement I made. You're either going to act, you're going to react, or you're going to be roadkill. And we're going to be reading about tons of companies in the next 18, 24, 36 months that just didn't get it. And then there's woe me stories, but then there's going to be all these other people that just says, oh my gosh, look at what they've done.
I heard a quote this morning on CNBC because it's so funny. I'm listening to like artificial intelligence podcasts. I'm listening to CNBC. Guess what? It's everyone's AI, right? And so the Sam Altman made a comment yesterday that I don't know if it was on Paul Reicher's podcast or CNBC, but I guess Sam Altman made a comment yesterday that hit me, like made me stop in my tracks. He was talking about how we're now about to enter into the Trump administration. So like a 4-year period that is going to be, and Sam Altman said, it is highly likely that we will have AGI during this next administration. And I was like, that statement, knowing, and Andy and I interviewed Sam about the implications of AI, to your point about what it can do to level you up, what it can do, like Andy likes to say, we're not going to in 2 years from now, we're just not going to recognize like what, maybe not in a year from now, but when you start to get 2-3 years from now, it is going to be unrecognizable. And it hit me like, oh my God, that's right. Like we're entering into this. It just happens to coincide with the new presidential administration. Like the next 4 years are going to be unbelievable when it comes to this stuff. And yeah, Fred, you're right. It's people need to understand that and look at the glass half full. I mean, there's a lot to be scared of and on a lot of levels, but there's a lot to at least understand that the next 4 years is going to be something else.
I guess what I would also add on that is I do think you're going to come to this. There's always kind of a popping of a bubble, if you will. And I'm sure that there'll be a little popping of an AI bubble that'll let some air out of it and we'll settle. And there's not going to be 500,000 winners. It'll probably settle out a little more and they'll do that. And that goes back to that, relevant stuff versus cool stuff. And it doesn't mean it's not there. It's just, I think that'll have to tame that down. that just gives you a chance to digest and then kind of go into a next level. But in the meantime, even with that said, I'm with you. This is just going to be one of those like, oh my God, how do you hold on?
Yeah, there's I'll just go drift off a second here, Andy. Sorry. But Andy always said, we're going to do these podcasts and we're going to invite cool, smart people like Fred on so we can just talk and just record it and let the world listen in. So like one of the things that's amazing over the holidays is I was thinking, I was watching these AI researchers talking about, because that's, we're in this business, so we geek out on this stuff. Like these AI researchers talking about how they're racing one another. So Google and OpenAI and Anthropic and Llama, from Meta, like they're racing one another to get to and now, by the way, Elon Musk XAI is 1000% in this game. They are catching up, if not already caught up. And there's rumors that they might surpass the frontier models that are out there. So like they're absolutely a player. So you got XAI, Anthropic, OpenAI, Google's Gemini, Meta's Llama, and those are just 5 of the major systems. And guess what they're all trying to do? I was like shaking my head as like, because we're all cut from the same era and cloth, the 3 of us. And I was like shaking my head going, oh my God, they're racing each other to see who can get to effectively this concept of AGI or super intelligence the first. And they're running up against maybe they're running up against scaling laws. Like they've run out of all the data they can train on the internet to make it smarter. And they're like, well, let's figure out ways to use synthetic data by making the AI talk to itself about how it solves problems. And then we'll use that data to train on. And I'm like shaking my head going, the average business leader, do they
Right, but
understand?
then that goes back to what I'm saying is, if that's happening, you have these synthetic threads and everything like that. Believe me, I was talking to this wicked smart kid 10 days ago that works for this company called Astroforge, and they're using AI models. So they're mining asteroids, and a cubic square foot of this stuff weighs a ton. And I'm going, you lost me at, but my point is, so just imagine as you go there, and let's just bring it back to like daily blocking and tackling. How far are we away from the accounting team saying, close the books?
Right.
How far are we give me this, give me this piece of data?
But Fred, you're right. That my point is, I think it might be the end of this year. And now that sounds like an insane thing for me to say, but if it's not the end of this year, it's maybe the end of next year. And if I'm even 80% correct, like last night, Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, was the keynote at CES. And I was watching video. Did you see any of this? He hauled out this thing. It looked like a giant wafer chip. And he's like, yeah, this is the whatever the thing was. And he was describing it as having the breakthrough. They've now figured out how to put X number of billions of transistors or whatever, and all these versions of, I'm getting it wrong, Hamilton, Rubin, whatever it's called. And they put it all on this thing. He goes, yeah, this thing can handle as much data right on this board as the entire internet traffic today. The entire internet traffic, he said last night. He goes, here it is. It's right here. It's like, this is one thing. And I was like, oh my God. So you got the AI researchers doing this one thing. You got the chip companies, particularly NVIDIA, doing this, and they're trying to get agentic about it. So anyways, Fred, to your point, I think this sort of just speak it into action, thing that Eric Schmidt has this expression, text to action, is coming. When things get agentic, when the memories get amplified, you bring it back to what you just said. I think we're a year, maybe 2 away from that. And I love what you said about I love the alligator comment too, but I love a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, and you eat the whale starting with one bite. It can feel overwhelming, but I love your advice of take a deep breath. You're going to find practical applications, but you got to just start by getting you and your team's head in the game here.
I agree. And I think it goes back to we were talking about culture and values, and think about, what do we always talk about? What are values of a company? You don't make values up. Your values are kind of your DNA. It's what people do when you're not around. So if we want to have a culture that's going to use, is going to use AI, let's just talk about it as this tool to help us evolve and take the company to the next level. We have to make sure that this new DNA strand is somehow woven in to the culture and values of the company. And that's probably this curiosity strand and it's an innovation strand, if you will. And you just have to do it. Those are the challenges, is then taking that back and doing that. And then you can only go as fast. You can only, I mean, there's just going to be, there's going to be some people that are going to be excellent racers that can go at a higher speed than others. And how do we bring that in? I'm actually super excited about. One thing we didn't talk about was that Andy kind of brought up was we've got an issue in our business is we're running a dual AI platform because we have significant operations in China and we cannot run anything that we're running outside of China in China. And everything that we're running inside in our programs in China are all then based in China, China-centric, everything like that. And there's some like amazing cool stuff that is coming out of China. It's not an either or. It's just, there's some really innovative things that we're being able to do over there. Business is a little different, a little smaller, but we really went to our guys and our leaders here and we brought them in. And not all our team speaks English, so they couldn't be on some of the calls, but we're pretty excited about that and seeing what they do. But unfortunately, what we're probably going to see in going forward is a dual lane approach to technology within the AI world. We run kind of, if you will, kind of a US centric AI for all our stuff across North America, everywhere else in Asia, except for China.
Yeah, Fred, I mean, we did not invite you on to opine and be our resident AI expert. We invited you on because, for 20 years, both Adam and I have been on, we've known you, you've been a member of Forum 3, and it's just been awesome to watch you plod along, drain the swamp, fight the alligators and drain the swamp again. And you just come at it with both humility, resilience, and putting one foot in front of the other, and your basic gut instinct on things has really, and the values of your company have just led you into great success. So it's been wonderful to watch, and it was really that, for lack of a better term, meat and potatoes approach to AI as CEO that we thought really resonated with the purpose of the podcast. Like this podcast is meant to be straight talk, CEO to CEO, leader to leader, what works about this AI shit, what doesn't. And I think in the last hour, you've been able to share with the audience a number of little morsels that I think we'll have you on again.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
That was a great episode. What a blast Fred is, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because in some ways it might be the most important episode we'll ever do because he's he's the epitome of pure growth mindset leader with the most non-technically sexy business you could have on its surface. It's actually a very sophisticated business, like global. He does e-commerce. It's a very sophisticated, complicated business in reality. But if you told somebody like I'm in the latex glove manufacturing and distribution business, like it's almost like a cliche of like, I'm in the like nuts and bolts business or something, it's like, and yet he has been one of the most, if not the most successful glove manufacturing company ever. I mean, possibly, I don't even know the history of the industry, but he might be the Starbucks of gloves. And he's one of them. And like, it's because and we've known Fred for
22 years.
Going on 25 years. Exactly. And I want to spend some time with you talking about this, Andy. His mentality, which, by the way, I had the privilege, and you have as well, with your work with Satya Nadella and stuff. Like when you come across like a seriously interesting growth mindset leader, you know it when you see it, and it's just an amazing thing to behold. And that's Fred, right? Like, he doesn't know anything about AI. He says he's like the least technical guy in the room, and yet he was probably the first person in his company to get on the urgency around that there's something really important happening with neural network Gen AI systems. We need to be on this, even if it's going to be a long journey.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, you hover on that, and I'm gonna both emphasize a couple points and add to what you're saying, which is, let's talk about Fred. What you're saying is that Fred, and we talk about this in our book, the AI first mindset as a critical component of the leader. And I think what you're saying is that it's, at least so far, the most important interview we've done on the podcast, because it's such a case study of that. Here you've got literally a import export business of plastic gloves. It's a commodity business. There's little to no differentiation. It's the plastic gloves that you see particularly during COVID, but when you go to the
You go
dentist,
to Chipotle and they're handling
yeah,
the food, they're
you go to
wearing the gloves.
you go to restaurants, you go to the
Yeah.
dentist, those plastic gloves, both clear plastic and now colored black. That's what he sells, and he sells that predominantly as a B2B business. And from Form 3 for over the 20 years, he's grown it into hundreds of millions of sales. And
Forum
what's
3, the YEO chapter, not Forum 3, the company.
yeah, and what's fascinating about it is so that's the business that he's in. He's not a technical guy, but he also was the first. He opened and started going to China before it was trendy to go to China for cost advantage, because he thought that was critical, strategically important to his business. So he did that, and he now has a China operations. He has a business processing, also for cost savings in Philippines, which he also spun out and helps, and that's a B2B business. He's helping other companies harvest the cost savings in the Philippines. And then he moves to AI. He meets some people. He's always listening for an angle in the commodity business, and he comes across AI. He writes down the name and he gets the people in, and he's like, yeah, let's try it. And he tries 3 things, and he goes on that journey, and he's been on that journey now for 20 years. And each one of those moves, we're focused on the AI point here, but that kind of leadership is what I think is a lot. It's not hovered on enough. And I think you're right to emphasize it as one of the most important episodes we've done so far. Maybe even more important than, the Moderna episode.
Right.
Bryce comes at it with a similar lens. I'm sure when Bryce listens to that in this commentary, I'm sure Bryce will be nodding his head going, yeah, creating the right culture under a leader like that is what is so important.
Yeah, Bryce from just for
Bryce
those
from
listening,
Moderna.
Bryce Challenel from Moderna, the head of AI. But you're right, and because Bryce is so it's okay. Let me bounce back and forth with you, because in the book, the chapter, if I remember correctly, we talked about the AI first mindset, but we talked about the growth mindset. Like we literally mentioned, like, people should be aware of the growth mindset. And I think we even like gave credit to some of the original authors that published and talked about the growth mindset and the research around it. And we're pointing out, like, Fred has it. And I saw that with Howard Schultz at Starbucks, that he was
No, and
incredible.
Satya has it as well. Satya has it as well.
Yeah, that's right. Because like Fred, like what I loved about what Fred said is that he said, "Oh, I went to this conference and we just said it just now in the episode. Like, I went to this conference and I was late, so I sat. I think a YPO conference. I was sitting in the back, and I was back with the speakers. Like, it was almost like I was in the green room with the speakers, and." He starts chit chatting, because that's how he is. He's like, "What do you do? Like, what are you going to speak about? Oh, you're going to speak about AI. Like, why is AI interesting? I've been using AI for years. No, not this kind of AI. There's a new kind of AI. Oh, what do you mean? Oh, it's like a digital brain." Like, if you're in the right mindset, you're asking questions. You're not thinking you actually know things. You're constantly trying to learn. And then what we've talked about is, like, and he mentioned it on the episode. Remember on the episode, he said, he had this like aha moment we kept trying to get him to say the holy shit moment, but he kept saying, I don't know if it was a holy shit moment. I had an aha moment. And it was like, this is going to be as big as the internet, if not bigger. Like this, once he had that, like switch flips, he's over this threshold you and I have talked about leaders that get it. And at that point, once you get it, like the other thing Fred talked about that it's worth commenting on is he said, you all of a sudden it's going to feel like you got to eat a whale or go on a 1,000-mile journey because it's change is hard. You realize like, oh crap, I got to go through a transformation, an education and transformation journey as a leader and as a company. And that's hard. And, he said, you said, what's the advice? And his answer, if I remember from just now, was
get started. Don't be roadkill.
Yeah. Don't be roadkill. And,
we could have titled the book instead of AI first or the holy shit moment. We could have titled it "Don't Be Roadkill."
Yeah, or like he actually talked about like eating a whale starts with one bite, and it's like, but his point was if you don't get on that journey, I think he said start now, like get on that journey. We couldn't agree more, but I gotta say like that doesn't happen without the right leadership. So I want to continue to hover on this leadership point, this mindset.
Can I add to something you're saying? So it's interesting because we've had, we're out talking to prospective customers, C-suite, director level, CEO, and this podcast is really aimed at CEO, our businesses, that's who we're talking to predominantly, but the C-suite. And it's clear that there are people that either naturally have that curiosity and that mindset, and there's a bunch that don't, and they're just busy. And it turns out that there's a lot to be busy with, and there's nothing wrong with being busy, but we recognize very clearly the divide of people who have had the aha moment and are in search of, how do I take this and digest it? And really, like, as we've talked about, this is, the next 18 months, the race is on. And for those of us, we talked about this with all rates, or for those of us who are in the industry, we're overwhelmed by the gap of people that get it and don't. And it's worth hovering over because Fred's the first positive. It might be interesting to have a couple of people like, oh, because we hear this. Oh, what could you give to me so that I could convince my CEO that this is worthwhile?
Right.
Right. And right. On some level we talk about what could we do? What would we say? What could we show people to deliver that aha moment? On some level, if you've sat down with ChatGPT and played with it for an hour, you haven't had a like holy shit moment in that hour. It's kind of I would say it's a business IQ test because it's.
I think that's right. Yeah, that's right. I was talking to one of our prospective customers the other day, and I was like saying, hey, this is what Form 3 does. This is what Andy and I do. And I was trying to get them to have that aha moment a little bit and distinguishing Gen AI or, these frontier AI systems from OpenAI and Anthropic and Google and Microsoft and whatnot. And I was explaining to him that it's better today. It's better than at almost any decision you're making. It's overall on average going to be better than you. And the problem that I think a lot of leaders have today, but haven't had the aha moment, is it's not better at you at every single interaction on every single chat. In fact, you have to know how to iterate with it. You don't have to be a prompt master or a prompt engineer, but you got to get your 10 hours in and get going. And if you haven't done that, you're very likely to be a leader that goes, I don't give what the fuss is about. So it writes a better email. When I ask it a question, sometimes it gets something wrong. Like everyone's talking about this thing, and I just think it's like a better Google. And you're like, yeah, well, I promise you that if you were even decent and proficient at using it on average, it'll make you better for sure. And I think we're now at the point, Andy, where it's going to make people significantly better than they would be on every decision they make if they know how to properly sort of bring it to the table and use it a lot. And they don't need to have some big bang thing. But anyways, it gets to the point of.
I think let's let's cut to the chase. I think we're of the opinion that it's better than you and I as CEOs. That the alien intelligence that is AI today is for sure
It,
at the
it,
same table, and it's better than us. And so we consult with it all the time at
we,
Forum 3,
it,
and we
well,
encourage.
there is. This is what's so hard about this area is, and I think we're getting better at this, like getting better at recognizing, like, how do we help a business leader understand what we understand about it, have that aha moment. So then we can turn around, because our services, helping somebody get to that aha moment isn't really what we offer as our service. I mean, we're doing it on this podcast. It's free to consume. Like, we go do keynotes. We write blog posts. Like, we're not trying to chart. We want someone to have that aha moment because it's in our selfish best interest, because then they're going to go, oh my God, can you help me train my team up? Can you help me identify use opportunities? Like, let's go. Right. Which is what Fred did. So Fred had that moment, and then he was like bringing in authors like us to go talk to his team for an hour and got going, right? So it's a fascinating topic about why. So it is better than you and I at times and in moments, but there's times where it's not, and it almost misses. It's funny, you're right, it almost is confusing, because if you're using it right, you're actually collaborating with it constantly. And so it's the human plus machine, which we've talked about a lot in our book. We talk about it over and over. It's this co-intelligence that Ethan Mollick talks about, whatever you want to call it, human plus machine. And like, that is better than the machine or the human. And I think I don't know how to do it. We
No,
talked to
so
people about
just can I
put an Iron Man suit, like the Iron Man suit, although in Iron Man, I think it can fly around by itself with Jarvis, but that's coming. We don't have the Iron Man suit that can fly around by itself yet, but we've got the Iron Man suit. That's kind of the analogy.
Yes. So I completely agree. That's well said. The one thing I would say, because you've been saying this and you're more articulate about it than I am, when I simplify it and say the alien intelligence, the AI is better than than you and I as CEO or anybody as CEO, that's sort of a misnomer, because it's actually what you said. It's actually the experience plus this AI that has innate capability that's better than any CEO. And it's the union of those two things. That's
That's
so
right.
powerful.
It's not quite garbage in, garbage out, but it's a little bit of that old saying, garbage in, garbage out. Like, if you know how to converse with it, if you know how to collaborate with it, and you do it enough. So I'll use a sports analogy, and I know I got to wrap up here, but like, follow this. In football, right? You sort of like, you gotta like, there's running, you running plays and passing plays. And you gotta like mix it up, right? You can't just only pass because it's sexy and it's exciting and you get 10 yards on the field. And a lot of times when you run, you get stuffed and it's like 3 yards in a cloud of dust, right? And I feel like using AI properly to make it better than you have to commit to the run game, right? You gotta like get in there and like collaborate with it a lot and understand that like it's the cumulative compounding effect that you brought it to the table and you augmented what you did with it so that it can really become this like Iron Man suit that you can wear and that you are better. Like, Tony Stark was pretty smart, he was pretty studly and in Iron Man, but when he put that suit on, he was Iron Man, right? And so there's an element of like, you gotta kind of know how to wear the suit.
Yeah.
A
Well,
lot of mixed
let's
metaphors
put it
there, I
this way.
know.
Your NFL fandom comes through in spades. If you're not an
Totally.
NFL fan, that last bit is probably lost to you. But the point has been made. I thought it was a great episode. At a future time when we have a chance to get through it, one thing I want to say, I think the fact that he tried three things and that the use case of HR and customer support, the fact that those were the two that he focused on that got the most ROI is something that we should talk about in a future episode. But we have to run, so let's wrap it up. Thank you all for listening. This is AI First with Adam and Andy. You can go to forum3.com, get get our podcast. You can get case studies, join our email list, follow us on LinkedIn, forum3.com. Thank you all. You can never overinvest in AI. Onward.